Well, let's talk more about that operation and its economic impact. Saruhan Hatipoglu, CEO of Beri and CGTN's global economics analyst, is here in studio with me. So, Saruhan, what's your take on the scope of these U.S. sanctions so far?
Well, I think when it was first brought up, I thought it was going to be really heavy-handed. But if you look at what it was, Rachelle, it's sanctions light or window dressing, to be fair, because the steel tariffs went up from 25% to 50% back when the August 2018 crisis happened. And the trade deal that the two countries were talking about, increasing commerce between the two countries from 20 billion to 100 billion, is on hold. And several visa restrictions. But other than that, it's really not that much. And if you look at the Turkish market and the Turkish lira, the way they behave today, I think it was priced in.
Now, U.S. lawmakers did say that this was just the beginning, but according to Reuters, President Erdogan told broadcaster NTV that he will never declare a ceasefire in northeastern Syria and that he wasn't worried about U.S. sanctions. How effective do you think U.S. sanctions can effectively be?
Well, it can be. This, like I said, this is sanctions light. The U.S. has a lot of control and leverage on Turkey. Mostly because the Turkish economy, due to low domestic savings, is heavily dependent on external financing. So the United States controls the US dollar transactions, and it could easily get into some kind of sanctions that would hit Turkish banks, as well as overall financial industry, and that would be very bad, because the interest rate situation in Turkey, as you know, with President Erdogan wanting to keep it low, when the sanctions hit and the lira depreciates, loses its value, it needs to go further up again, and that's what caused the recession in Turkey in August 2018. So this could get uglier, and I think with what I've been personally hearing from the Congress as well as President Trump, it really is up to President Erdogan and his policies from this point on.
Now, you do have these two strong men at the center of this, and we saw that President Trump threatened to totally destroy and obliterate the Turkish economy if Turkey does anything that he considers to be off limits. He didn't go into any detail about sort of where that line would be. Does the U.S. have the ability to do that unilaterally?
Probably not. And you know, you don't hear that phrase, and it says swiftly destroy the economy, used for a NATO ally. Very often, but nowadays I think it's fair game. But no, there's the European Union side of it, and when you look at the European Union and the UK, they are actually coming and being pretty strict against Turkey with what's happening. But especially the European Union, they need to take into consideration, and they know this, that there is a cooperation taking place between the Turkish side and the EU regarding the refugee flow into European countries. So there is the leverage that President Erdogan has on the EU, because we're talking about 3.5 million refugees in Turkey, and that's the reason of what we're seeing here with the operation. Having said that, unilaterally no, but still the US can take unilateral action, and that could cause a lot of problems for the Turkish economy. Look, the Turkish lira lost 5% of its value, even though it did well today, in October. And if you look at the MSCI emerging markets currencies, they gained 1.3%. So, and this was the good time that we were looking at in October for emerging markets. So yes, the Turkish economy is fragile, and I think it could get worse.
And in terms of regional economic impact, what could we be looking at?
Well, region-wise, I think the U.S. has made a choice, which surprised a lot of its allies as well. Geopolitically, there's a switch or shifting of power in the region, and that is certainly going to hit the economy in the regions. Russia is getting more involved in the region, and Syria, the forces that the Kurdish group were fighting, now they're allying with them. So it is really interesting what is going to happen, but we could see the Russian assistance coming in. But the war is never good in the medium to long term in economies that are already suffering. In the short term, with government support, sure, there could be some increase in respective GDPs, but overall, in the long term, that's not going to help the economies at all.
And you mentioned this idea of sort of the shifting allegiances. Let's talk more about Turkey's relationships with the EU. We know that they had wanted to be part of the EU. This has clearly strained relations somewhat. What could the fallout look like for both of them, worst case scenario with this?
Well, the EU membership is a bridge too far for Turkey, and it's always been the case. So this has certainly made things worse, as if they could go any worse. But look, there's always tension between has always been tension between EU and Turkey. This is not going to help, but at the end of the day, if we're again talking about economic relations, military relations between Turkey and the EU, we often overlook the fact that Turkey is a NATO member. So it is not going to, it's not that easy to completely sever relations.
Right.
There's a lot of economic ties between the two groups. But again, I will emphasize this again, Russian involvement is going to increase in the area, and Turkey, because of changing balance of power in the region, is shifting a little bit toward Russia. So that is not good news, and I think Europeans are watching this with some concern.
All right, we certainly all will be watching. Thank you so much. Always good to have you. Saruhan Hatipoglu there, CEO of Beri and CGTN's Global Economics Analyst.